Hello, everyone. Today, I would like to talk about Arab tribalism. The reason why it's so important essentially is because this was the social setting in which Arabs operated before the incorporation of Islam. Arab tribalism, Islam, and the Muslim Brotherhood are my field of expertise. And so today I would like to speak about Arab tribalism. And the reason why it's important is because Islam has essentially been founded upon its social norms and its doctrine. I think, in my opinion anyway, the first thing that Western people do not understand about Middle Eastern cultures and the Arab culture and Islam is that cultures that were developed in a desert setting evolved differently than European or more Western cultures. Now, what I'm trying to say doesn't mean that Western cultures are necessarily better than desert cultures, but today we will put an emphasis on Islam, and I'll make you draw your own conclusions as to whether Arab culture or Western culture is better. The main factor on which these two cultures differ is essentially that cultures that evolved in the desert, their main concern, beside pirates and violence, was water resources and the tribe. The reason why is because essentially only tribes that were powerful enough to control the water resources are the tribes that survived in the desert. The tribes that did not control water resource had to either go on war or be subjugated to other tribes that do control the water resources. On the other hand, for example, I've been living in the UK and Ireland for quite some time. I don't think that the ancestors of the native people here had any issue with water, for example. So they might have been tribal 2,000 years ago, 3,000 years ago. However, they were not really having, they didn't quite have that obsession for control over specific land and to subjugate other tribes for the resources that the land they control generates. And you can also see that in the past 50 or 60 years, how that sort of culture has been controlling the West through the supply of oil. Okay, so let's start. In order just to understand this period of time in Arab history is called or is considered by Arab Muslims as the period of Jahiliyyah. Jahiliyyah essentially means ignorance or the age of ignorance. And this doesn't mean that the Arabs were ignorant. It just means that essentially they did not have any law or any centralized moral and legal authority in their society. So essentially, pre-Islamic Arabian society was organized around tribes, not states. There was, or empires, there was no central government, no written legal code, and no universal system of justice. Survival depended on access to scarce resources, particularly water wells and grazing land. As a result, power tended to concentrate in tribes that controlled these sort of territories. Another example, if you are familiar with the story of the Jews of Khaybar, the Jews of Khaybar essentially had control over very fertile land, and they were essentially the had some sort of monopoly, I would say, over growing dates in the desert. As a result of this, power essentially was concentrated in tribes that controlled these territories. So if you had a water well, all the other tribes that do not have access to one will essentially be your subjugates. This sort of society or this sort of environment emerged a powerful tribal value system, and it's centered around a couple of key concepts. The reason why I think these concepts are so fundamental to understanding Islam today is because all these rules have been incorporated into Islam through the ijma, which is one of the four sources of legislations in Islam. So the key doctrines or concept in Arab tribalism are as follows. We have Moruwa, which is masculine virtue. We have Asabiya, which is tribal solidarity. We have Sharaf, which is honor. And we have Shaja, which is bravery, and will be explained later as part of masculine virtue. And the last one is called Thar, which is blood revenge. These values shaped behavior, regulated conflict, and defined identity in a society governed by costume and collective honor rather than a written law. Okay, so up until the 6th century, when Muhammad was born, this was the main societal norm in Arabia. Okay, so let's use comparatively. Jews will have the Ten Commandments, the Book of Deuteronomy. Christians will have again the Ten Commandments, and then further preachings from Jesus. Kindness and graciousness and all those. And the Arabs did not have that sort of doctrine. So let's start with Muruwa. Muruwa is masculine virtue and honor. Okay? Masculine or manly virtue of honor. It represents the ideal of honorable conduct, but not in a universal moral sense. It refers to a specifically tribal virtue measured by courage, dominance, generosity to allies, and the willingness to defend honor through force. I'll repeat this. Part of characteristics of masculinity in Arab tribalism is the willingness to defend honor through force. What it means? It means essentially that in this framework, violence was not criminal or chaotic, it wasn't wrong, and there was no system whereby you can evaluate whether it's an eye for an eye, whether it's, to protect an oppressed party from somebody who aims to cause them harm. Not really to do with that. Essentially, violence is sort of justified and ritualized for the purpose of confrontation. Okay, it doesn't mean that it will be Arabs against non-Arabs. This also applies to dynamic between Arab tribes. So in this sort of framework, violence was not criminal or chaotic. It was ritualized, it was expected or anticipated, and often morally justified. To refuse confrontation when honor was challenged was to invite humiliation and weakness. The second important factor or important doctrine within Arab tribalism was blood revenge. Today, in today's context, or modern context, people are more familiar with that in the sense of violence against women, but it's not necessarily to do with women specifically. It's just more violence or justified violence towards people that dishonor the tribe. Okay, the tribe can be dishonored by people who are members of the tribe or be dishonored by people who are external to the tribe. So, in essence, if a member of a tribe was killed or dishonored, retaliation was not optional. It was a moral obligation owed to the dead and to the tribe as a whole. Blood feuds could last generations because honor was collective. The honor of the tribe is collective honor. That means that if, I don't know, somebody stole my dad's parking spot, he dishonored the tribe, as my father is the head of the tribe, the patriarch of the tribe. Okay? So once my dad tells me, listen, he stole my parking spot, go retaliate. Okay? Even if by law, The parking spot, which was supposedly stolen from my dad, is public or even owned by the person, I am obliged to retaliate that person dishonoring the tribe. In these sort of societies, justice is not about proportionality or truth, but about restoring balance through retaliation. Failure to avenge an injury meant the loss of dignity and standing within the wider tribal world. So, under these two systems of Murua, of masculinity, virtue, and blood feuds, women became symbolic bearers of tribal honor. Okay, this is really important for people to understand why women today are a target in Muslim societies. And again, the thing about that sort of perception means that any sort of a violation by a woman, or even, for example, if a woman met another man who is outside the tribe, she cannot marry him. Okay? Why she cannot marry him could be because the tribe leader has already assigned her an arranged marriage, or because that lady's tribe is in war with the other tribe, and in that sort of setting, you don't have your individuality to come forward and say, right, I love him though. Doesn't really work like this. So any perceived violation of the tribe's honor, whether it is real or rumored, could provoke violent reprisals. What does it mean? It means that when you are a society that's founded upon honor, there is no need for truth and there is no need for justice. The only thing that matters is the honor of the tribe. So when you ask yourself, why would a Muslim brother go and, hurt his sister? It's not personal, it's not even evil. It's important to understand this is just the sort of mentality instilled by them by the tribal mentality. So if your sister went, for example, with a kafir, with a Jew, with the Christians, and this is against the desire of the head of the tribe, your sister essentially has damaged the honor of the tribe. And for this, under the rules of Muruwa, she has to be punished. The next factor I want to talk about is Asabiya, which is tribal solidarity. And Asabiya is it's so important. The reason why is because tribal solidarity dictates reality, and I'll repeat that. Tribal solidarity dictates reality. Essentially, what it means is that group solidarity and loyalty to the tribe outweighed any abstract or universal moral principle. Right and wrong, or um, a truth and a lie, they don't really matter in that sort of setting because everything is subordinate to the tribe's survival. So if you need to lie for the tribe to survive, if you need to deceive, if you need to steal, if you need to raid, which we're going to talk about shortly, it's all good as long as a tribe survives and maintain its honor. Ibn Khaldun, a very famous Islamic theorist or philosopher, said that Asabiya is the foundation of tribal strength. In this worldview, moral obligation extended only as far as the group or the tribe. Beyond that lay indifference or hostility. Essentially, the most important thing is not the truth or justice, it is the tribe and the honor of the tribe. That means that if the head of the tribe says or told you good morning at 8 p.m., you have to respond to him and say good morning. You can't tell him, oh, have a look. It's dark outside, it's not morning. It doesn't really work like that. On a more societal sort of context or setting, this essentially prevents tribes to have genuine conversations or ever be able to reach any genuine, real, consensus or reconciliation. It does not happen. The next factor is called shaja. I'm not going to talk about it too much, but essentially what it is that bravery, especially among men, can be demonstrated through raids. The name of the raid is called jizz. Um, they're not considered as theft, even though they are. Um, the main goal of these raids is to restore tribal honor, and to sort of display courage and dominance over others. Success from raids essentially brought prestige and resources. Defeat meant shame, vulnerability, and loss of honor. So defeat is really, really serious, and success is very, very serious. Warfare was therefore both economic and symbolic, and you can see that today. If you ask yourself why do they do this, there is an element of symbolism and honor and violence. Okay, while we call it violence in Western society, they don't really call it violence. Okay, so when we judge them, they don't quite process what we are saying the way we think they process it. Okay, and it took me a while. I grew up with Muslims and Arab Muslims, not, Pakistani or Bangladeshi or Malaysian. I grew up with Arab Muslims, spent most of my youth with them, speaking Arabic, and there was always that sort of gap in understanding or in conversation where when the topic becomes a bit uncomfortable for them, they will lie, but you can see on their face and body language that they understand that this is wrong when done to you because you do not understand why they are lying, but you know that they are lying. And this is a very difficult dynamic with people, especially when you're friendly, on a human level. Like it's not always about politics. Sorry for going off topic, but I live here in the UK, and most conversations people have are about politics, racism, DI, and all these things. Um, it's not always the thing between people. It is something that's been happening in the West that I do hope the West will manage to get over. The next important concept of Arab tribalism is sharaf and wafa. Sharaf means honor, okay? And its function is a form of social currency. It determines status, alliances, and marriage prospects. Now, okay, we sort of done doctrines. There is one very important thing I forgot to mention, and this is something I'm asking you to search. Obviously, everything I talked about, I want you to search and to read and explore by yourself. That's why I also gave you all the definition in Arabic in case you want to, just Google the term and see what it means. One thing about Arab tribalism is loyalty operated in clear hierarchical layers. So first it comes the immediate family, then the extended kin, then the tribe, and finally tribal alliances. There are no more obligation beyond these circles. What it means uh, is quite horrible things. Say, for example, we are friends from school, like really, really good friends. We grew up together. We are from the same village, and your dad, who is the head of a tribe, and my dad, who is the head of a tribe, had a fallout over something. Okay, it doesn't need to be a significant thing because remember, as long as it dishonors the tribe, that what matters. So, say for example, if my dad told me from tomorrow when you see him at school, beat him up or punch him in the nose, I'm ought to do that. Okay? It's not like I hate that person now. It's not like, I don't remember everything that has happened between us beforehand, that we were friends, we played basketball together, we smoked cigarettes together, whatever. It's just an obligation to the tribe that I go every day from tomorrow and punch that friend in the nose. The way for us that we sort of talk about this circles of loyalty, which is extremely significant, is this is the way we remember it. Me and my brother against my cousin, me and my cousin against the neighbor, me and the neighbor against the stranger or the foreigner, okay? There's always an obligation at the end of the day that you will unite with your tribe or neighbors against the stranger. Okay? When it comes to a religious setting, it means that everyone who doesn't belong to your religion is a stranger in the cycles of loyalty. So that means that you don't really owe them anything. Not the truth, no nothing. The only thing they owe you is to honor your tribe. Lastly, I would like to talk about it's maybe one thing or two things. It could be, merged into one topic, land and honor, the meaning of land in Arab culture. Land was not merely property, it was an extension of identity and honor. Losing land means losing dignity, memory, and status. This explains the intensity of tribal land disputes and their persistence across generations. And if you know about the war between the Shia Muslims and the Sunni Muslims, this is a war that will be eternal. There's no way to change it because so much blood has been spilled that there is no way to reconcile between the two. They're always going to be in a battle, and the more they're going to kill of each other, the worse it's going to become. Now, you ask me how you resolve this? You can't. Lastly, the last thing is sumuh. Okay, sumuh essentially um, means that you have to be loyal to your tribe all the time. In conflict, every member is obliged to assist. So if there is a conflict, everybody has to take part. And in next videos, I'll touch how sumuh is actually translated, or how all these lectures essentially is translated into the concept of jihad. Okay? Collective survival dependent on mutual defense and shared risks. So let's conclude this bit, and I'm sorry for the poor audio quality. The main and most important concept, in my opinion, from today's video is the concept of asabiya. Okay, the reason why it's important, and I'm asking you again to go and read about it. A lot of people today um, use the word taqiyya. Okay, taqiyya, um, as I guess is a sort of concept or doctrine which allows Muslims to lie. Okay, this is misuse of the concept. The term taqiyya, it comes from Shia Muslims, okay, not from Sunni Muslims. And the reason why it exists is because Shia Muslims have always been a minority among very large Muslim society. Okay, so essentially they are allowed to deceive through taqiyya in order to maintain their religion. Okay, what we see that's happening on today in the West is not quite taqiyya. Okay, it's more asabiya, it's more tribal loyalty that was incorporated into Islam through ijma. Okay? Again, ijma is one of the four sources of legislations in Islam, and essentially it turned the whole Arab tribalism sociology into a theology. Okay? I don't know if it makes a lot of sense, but what it did is it gave divine powers to Arab tribalism in the name of God. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I do promise to make more of those. If there are some topics about Middle Eastern politics or cultures or societies, or specifically about Islam, Arabic, anything as such that you'd like to know, please leave me a comment. I'd love to talk about any topic about the Middle East. I have also previously promised to upload a long video about the KGB and Soviet or communist propaganda in the West, how this has been affecting our academia, schools, courts, prisons, and I hope to finish this video soon. It is not as easy one as I want it's not as easy as I thought it would be to make actually because I try to extract videos from the actual lecture of Yuri Benzemov and then apply that on our reality. However, my video editing skills are not great. So thank you very much for investing your time in listening to me. Obviously, if you would like to get information or to explore other topics, please let me know and have a great day.